Well, hello everybody, and how are we all doing today? Is Sunday, the 11th of January 2026, the second episode of 2026. Hope you're well. Hope you're all having a great weekend. I think the big thing, of course, to mention is that we have had this horrible storm come through. We here in Littlehampton, we've escaped unharmed on the most part that I can tell. But I hope that is the case for all of you. I hope you haven't had any damage yourself. If you have, please do let us know. Now, today I do want to talk about what makes a good garden centre. It's a part of a conversation that came up last week with some of the discussions we were having. But what makes a good garden centre? That's what we're going to be, or that's the question I'm going to be asking. I have also been making a bird feeder out of recycled material and a meal out of some summer produce. So let's get into it. Let's ask that question. What to you makes a good garden centre? Before we get into that, let's see if anybody is out there. We've got Adrian saying hi, Richard and all. We have got Scott. Good evening, all. Good evening to you. Beddoes, evening all. Someone who knows what they are talking about is better than school kids on weekend jobs that can barely use the till. Straight in there with that answer to that question. We have got Jenny says, hello everyone, I hope you are well. We have got Turbo Stream. Good evening, Veg Podcasters. Good evening to you. Hargrave Gas. Evening all. Hope you've had a great week. Good evening to you. Nicola's there. Evening all from a windswept, destroyed Cornwall. Now more gales and heavy rain. What about yourself? Did you get any damage? Ballysillian Allotment Man, hi all, good evening to you. Allotted Chef, aka Nathan, good evening everyone, good evening to you. Jenny is there. Have you had any damage, Nicola? I've already mentioned that. Anna Jones, good evening, gardeners. Good evening to you. Digwell, hi all. Stormy night here. Good evening to you. Nicola, thumbs up all. Indeed, give us a thumbs up. Yes, roof fencing fascias damage. Oh, that don't sound good. That don't sound good at all. Andrew's there. Evening, Richard and the Veg Army. Good evening to you. Nicholas says, electric been a bother in the village. Still not 100% in places. Come back in the village yesterday evening, but not full power. Not good. It's not good. Jenny, bless you. Right. Chili Kate, hi everyone. Just one chili tonight. Good evening to you. Hope you are well. Rebecca is there. Good evening. Good evening to you. Turbo Stream. We don't have anywhere near the predicted snowfall. I felt sorry for the people in the southwest. So yeah, I think the big topic is of course this storm. If you've had any damage, if you've had any accidents, put your hands up and let us know what has happened. Hopefully most of us have got away with it. Over on Instagram, Crab89 has joined. Welcome along. Lovely to see you. Now, my question that I'm asking today is, what makes a good garden centre? And this is a question that I have been asking myself several times. When I was on the road, I used to travel around and I used to find some really good garden centres and some really bad garden centres. However, and I've been giving it some thought this week, funny enough, while thinking about this question. Now, there was one particular brand of garden centre that I would go to, and it specialised, it was only in a certain area, it specialised in selling pretty cheap stuff, tools, plants, garden equipment. It was very reasonably priced. But I can't say the staff were the most knowledgeable when it came to plants, but I was happy in there because the prices were good. Now this covered into something that I've been thinking about. So a lot of people would say to me that they want a garden centre to have a good calf. Well, why do you want a good calf in a garden centre? This is a question that I've often pondered. Why do you want a good calf in a garden centre? You go there to buy plants. You go there for the plants. What is it about the calf that makes the garden centre so good? For me, I want a garden centre to have good plants that are available when I want them, when I need them. I want less of the garden tat that goes on. You know, the stuff like the candles. I know some people will like the candles. I can't stand them, but less of the candles and just the tat that we get in the garden centres, especially around Christmas time. I want the staff to have a bit of knowledge about their plants and the products that they're selling, but also to be passionate gardeners. So when we ask them questions, they can come back with full on proper answers. Not just about how to grow things, what's best in this sort of environment, or what do you recommend for this and that. For me, that is a very, very important thing. I think that covers my thoughts, but I'd love to hear what you think on what makes a good garden centre. Jenny says, for me, a good garden centre is a local nursery, lots grown with themselves, good coffee and a simple cafe. All the staff know who they are talking about and are happy. All the staff know what they are talking about and are happy to help you. I do think that is important. Do think that is very important, that they're happy to help you and they know what they are talking about. Jenny says, good choice of plants, seeds, compost, etc. Yep. Nicola's obviously put her hands up as she's suffered some damage, as we've already mentioned. Anna Jones says, well-trained staff makes a huge difference. Obvious things like keeping plants watered. And now that's actually a very good point, because I would go into some garden centres and there was plants that just clearly were not looked after. And some you could say were not necessarily garden centres, but the plants were not looked after and they looked worse for it. So yes, looking after the plants is actually a good sign of a good garden centre. I agree. Turbo Stream says, I came down with a fever, cabin fever. I've not been out since Thursday morning. Too cold, and the pavements are like skating rinks. Yeah, not good, not good. What else have we got? Rob says, good evening all. I hope you all survived the storm and snow. Good evening to you. We had snow for over a week now, says Turbo Stream. There we go. Nicholas says, garden centres that sell good choice of plants and less domestic stuff, books or small Waitrose. Now, this is actually something we discussed a bit last week. Waitrose popping up in garden centres. It feels very, very wrong having that. It just doesn't feel right. Why would you want a small Waitrose taking up space in a garden centre? However, is that a sign that people aren't going to a garden centre and they need encouraging in? I wonder. Jenny says, my favourite local one doesn't have a reduced section. They repot and grow plants back to health themselves. They don't bring too much. They don't bring too much in, so they do have lots left over. Again, I think that is a good sign of a garden centre. Plants grown on site, looked after, and are employing local people. And I don't mean that because I'm not a local shop for local people type person, but I do want to see people employed. Digwell, I prefer the independent garden centres over the national chains. I'm with you on that, actually. I prefer the independent garden centres. So I have got 1, 2, 3, 4, let's say 4 garden centres within half-hour drive of me, maybe 5, 6 if you think about it. So they're all very different. We have got 2 which are part of a large chain, different chains, and they're okay, but they are, particularly one of them, very, very expensive and very generic. I go in for a particular brand of compost. They don't always have it. In fact, a particular brand, I'd like Rocket Grow compost, I'll be honest. And I have to actually go to a farm supplier to get that compost because garden centres near me, they sell it for a bit and then they get a better deal with somebody else. And I just don't feel it's as good. So that's a reason not visiting a garden centre, the right brand of compost. But the independents I have near me, one of them, well, we had one that was very independent, very local, very bougie. And unfortunately, it closed down because it just wasn't getting enough custom. It was too expensive as well for the area. Littlehampton isn't the most affluent area, and they were going for the affluent market, and it just didn't work. But there's some smaller independents who They do good, actually. I quite like them. I do quite like the independent ones that I can think of. We've got Mark has joined. Good evening from a wet and windy Wick in Littlehampton. Hello to you. Hope you are well, very close to me. Andrew, my mother had a great garden centre, Dobby's in Wallington, until it became too big and full of tat. Now she goes to a small one opposite. Isn't that the case? For me, the tat that garden centres sell is a big annoyance. I don't want to buy candles. I want to buy plants. I want to buy gardening products. But I'm going to counteract that by saying if that is what is getting people in the door and keeping the garden centre going, then perhaps they have to move with the times. I don't like it, but it's not quite right. Now, Digwell says, a good restaurant is an added bonus, almost essential to me. So, it's really the restaurant. I don't go into a garden centre. I mean, I have actually gone into a garden centre purposely for the restaurant. Recently, this was with my brother-in-law and his wife and my wife, but that was more. We weren't going into the garden centre for garden centre. We were going into there for the restaurant, somewhere cheap, well, free to park and get reasonably good food. But the restaurant to me just isn't important. It isn't important to me. I'd sooner. I don't go into a garden centre to spend that long, I guess you could say. So I'm just more. I guess I'm an in and out guy. I want to get what I want and go. The days of it being you would go to a garden centre to have a look around and spend a day there never appealed to me. I'd sooner be gardening. But as I say, each to their own. This is not my opinion. It's everyone's opinions. Jenny says, Richard, coffee always a must. Anywhere I go, you can buy me a coffee at Gardeners World Live. Yeah, I mean, I do drink a lot of coffee as well, but in a garden centre, no, not for me. A good garden centre does not have a cap and actually sells plants, seeds, and compost, says Rob. I think the CAF is a nice bonus, but not critical. I think that is how I feel. But again, I'll tell you what, let's have a raise of hands. Who here feels the CAF is important? Nicholas says, I feel sorry for staff on minimum contracts, so they have to pay less for holidays, etc. Has a knock-on effect to staff morale. Yeah, staff is a big thing. I did do an investigation into garden centres a few years ago, and particularly with the Christmas tat, as I like to call it. And the reason that garden centres told me that they were actually selling Christmas tat is because gardeners don't visit the garden centre during the winter months, and therefore they were having to lay people off. So they found that selling the Christmas tat, brought people in and meant they didn't have to lay staff off, which makes sense. Does make sense. I can't say I like it, but if it keeps staff employed, then that is a good thing. Rebecca says, I must admit, Richard, I always use the cafe in my garden centre as I meet my garden friends there once a month. It's enjoyable and we can chat about plants to our hearts content over a coffee. Now, you know what? You have actually made a very good point there, Rebecca, and a point that tallies up with something that I've always thought about. I've always believed that garden centres should be the meeting place for gardeners, especially locally, and they should be having events on to get people in. And actually having like a meeting point for gardeners in the CAF does make sense. So you are starting to change my mind on the CAF. You are making good cases for the CAF, I have to say. Andrew says, my mother found a strange plant growing under the bird feeder. She took the leaf to Dobby's to be identified. No one could recognize it, but it turned out to be cannabis leaf. So ignorant. It happens. It happens a lot with bird feed. It does contain hemp, I believe it is. A good garden centre, says Ballycillian Allotment Man, a good garden centre should be all about quality and a range of plants that are hard to get elsewhere. So that's interesting. Hard to get elsewhere. If they're very specialised, you're probably looking more at nurseries, but if they're very specialised plants that are hard to get elsewhere, does that mean people aren't wanting to buy them elsewhere and that the market is only really there for a certain range of plants. And is that a good thing or a bad thing? If you think we go to a supermarket to buy milk, where we can get milk anywhere, so it is an item that people would buy, and it's possibly the same with common plants. Let's say marigolds. We'll go to a garden centre to buy marigolds because everyone wants them, I guess. What have we got? Hargrave says it has to be down to the quality of the plants. My favourite sells a lot of stuff I'm not interested in, but the plants are so much better than the local nursery, which struggles to look after things. Quality of plants is very, very important. Quality of all products, actually, in a garden centre is very, very important. Not just plants, but everything in the garden centre. I've made a case before that I've always believed that the garden centres that are selling products should be using those products in their garden centre, such as the hose pipes or the trowels and the spades and the forks. They should be using them if they're selling them in that garden centre. And that's something I still believe and will always believe. Because if you're selling a product, you've got to use it yourself in order to have faith in selling it. Turbo Stream says, I don't really go to garden centres much, but when I do, I don't seem to buy much. Often a good cafe is important, as lots of people meet for coffee and then buy a few things. You are constantly making good arguments for the cafe. You really are. But don't you feel that's a shame that you're going to the garden centre for the cafe and plants just happens to be there as well? As I said, I do believe we've got to make people want to go into garden centres, the same as butchers and everything else. We've got to make people want to go in there in order to spend their money. So, yeah. Rob says, we had a great little nursery near us with really great plants and full of knowledge, but had to close. I do think garden centres and nurseries are struggling, and I think they will struggle for quite a while. I don't like it. I'm not happy about it, but there does seem to be something in the air that they're just struggling. It's just a struggle for them. Chili Kit says, I want the same as everyone else, but I think what we do have to consider is that these places are businesses and have to make money. So if they sell candles to survive, so be it. Again, I don't disagree. And I'm really conflicted when I've been challenging myself and you on this very subject, because, as I said, I want to go in a garden centre before garden products, plants and everything. I don't like the candles. I hate the smell of the candles when you walk through them. But if that's what they have to do to survive, then okay. But then does that become, what happens if the garden centre side of things gets slowly swallowed up and it becomes a candle shop, an out-of-town candle shop, for example? Is that acceptable? Now, one example that I've often shared happened a few years ago when I used to look after a chain of garden centres. And I went into this garden centre. It was about October, November time. The Christmas stock was out. They were selling handbags and things like that, but the thing they had removed was the garden tools, the spades and the forks. And for me, that felt wrong. It felt very, very wrong, because this was in a little town that had no real other place. That if you were working on, say, a Sunday and you're on your allotment, your fork breaks, you want to go grab another one, you run down to your local garden centre thinking that's the place you're going to get a garden fork, and then they haven't actually got them, but they're selling handbags. It felt very disconnected to me. Felt very, very disconnected to me. And I share that story a lot. Digwell says, garden centres have changed. As much as we all want plants, etc., they cannot survive without the concession stores. Again, I can't disagree. I mean, it's a shame, though, isn't it? It is a shame that it's came to that. We are obviously, everyone in this audience are keen gardeners. We love gardening. We want to do more gardening. We would happily, or would we happily go and spend money in a garden centre? That might be a bigger question to ask when we're investigating this very, very question. Do we want to go and spend money in a garden centre? I think gardeners, by our very nature, we do try to do everything as cheap as we can get it. Hence why we grow things from seed. Hence why we upcycle things, recycle things, and buy good tools from a car boot. Are we the problem then? Because we want to save money? Interesting, isn't it? Nathan says, I definitely prefer nurseries to garden centres. Yeah, I'm with you. Chitty Cat says, they can't be cheap and sell good plants and employ knowledgeable staff. Again, I don't disagree with that actual statement there. They can't be cheap, sell good plants. And that comes back to what I just said. Do we as gardeners want everything to be cheaper than what can be provided? Toby says, sorry I'm late. Hello, Veg Legends. Hello to you. Hope you are well. We're talking about what makes a good garden centre. Turbo Stream says, I once asked about some cyclamen plants, if they were hardy or not. The woman didn't know. I brought them and they turned out to be not hardy and died. Yeah. Again, I do think training their staff should be top priority. And I say that, I think any job, I think when they pay minimum wage, they think they don't need to train them. But if you've got people selling your products, they need training. I've always believed that people working in garden centres should have a passion for gardening as well. Maybe I've got rose-tinted glasses, but it's just my belief. Digwa says, my local garden centre stopped selling rocket grow because of all the complaints about it. Quite founded, in my honest opinion. Awful stuff. It came 12th and 13th in my compost trials. It's interesting. I prefer rocket grow. I've had good results with rocket grow, but like we say, everybody is different. Bally Cillian says, garden centres open 12 months a year. They could go bankrupt if only sold seeds and plants. But there's more to gardening than just seeds and plants. And they're just some of the things that I think we are talking about. I certainly think garden tools and garden-based items is probably the better way to phrase it. But yeah, we know, as I said when I investigated, that they can't survive the winter period without selling Christmas tat, which is a shame. It is a shame. Scott says, for me, a perfect garden centre is a good nursery. Mine has a calf, but they only sell seeds, plants, tools, compost pots, etc. No clothes, candles, other stuff like that. Yeah, see, to me, that feels like a good garden centre, but it's a difficult one. Difficult, it really. Rob says our nearest garden centre is a B&Q. I mean, that does constitute a garden centre, but they can't. Perhaps that's the trouble, actually. B&Q and places like that are actually pretty good with the stuff that they sell that people aren't going into garden centres. Perhaps. Nicholas Potter, thumbs up. Remind me what the question I asked earlier. I've forgotten it. Turbo Extreme says, I occasionally meet my cousin at garden centre when she is en route from Southampton to Carlisle. We meet and have a coffee, so sometimes a calf is important. Yeah. Again, you are starting to persuade me a bit more on a calf. I still very rarely go to them, but you are persuading me a bit more. Digwell says, when I say essential, it's for the breakfast, not tea and stickies. Yeah, breakfast. Yeah, again, the calf. You are starting to remind me a lot. I love my tea shop. Free tea twice a month. Excellent. Chili Cake, we go into the calf most visits and even sometimes when we don't need plants. I gotta admit, actually, when I was on the road, I used to stop off at garden centres for the use of the toilet because it was always free parking and there was always a toilet. But again, I'm using it to my advantage. But of course, I would always have a look around the garden centre at the same time. So I'm kind of falling into that trap of I've gone in there for one thing and actually it turns out to be more. Ballycillian says the CAF is important. It helps keep the garden centre financially viable. But don't you think that's a shame? Don't you think that is a shame that the cafe makes the garden centre viable? The garden centre should be viable on top of the CAF. Jenny says my favourite nursery independent garden centre is as much part of the business as the plants. They have a garden you can go and explore and sit in it. I think without the CAF, the garden centre may close. It's a shame. It's a shame. I've always sort of felt that a garden centre should model themselves more on IKEA, actually. And this is how, if I was running a garden centre, I would do it. So you go to a garden centre and you actually walk around garden rooms to get an idea of what you could do yourself, get inspiration before you buy, much like IKEA. And I still feel that is the way to go with garden centres. It may not be, obviously, I don't own a garden centre. I've never worked in a garden centre. So what do I know? But for me, that's the type of garden centre I would want to go to. She can do that in a pub. Yeah. One of my local garden centres has free coffees and tea for their club members, 4 cups a month. Again, not a bad idea. Not a bad idea, getting people through the door. How often do you, here's a question for you then, how often do you visit a garden centre in a month? Toby Clark, I feel they need to evolve the same way pubs did. Back in the 70s, pubs only sold booze, and now they need food sales to make a living. Yeah, again, you are making very good points there. You really are challenging me on the cafe side of things. Hargrave says, I have managed to persuade people to have business meetings in garden centre caps. Then I can go plant shopping after the meeting is finished. Again, when I worked in looking after garden centres, I was on one garden centre, they actually kicked somebody out because they were interviewing people in their cafe. And I didn't, they were buying teas and coffees while they were there, but they actually kicked them out for interviewing in the cafe. That seems counterproductive at the same time. Digworth says, me too. It's easy with the grandkids. A huge cab never falls, so easy to get seated. You are making genuine good points about the CAF. You really are. The Belly Ceiling says, how many of tonight's viewers have went in to a bar for a meal? Surely bars should only sell alcohol, but like garden centres, they're diversifying to keep open. Yeah, we've all done it. We have all done it. Jenny says, I tend to avoid large chain garden centres. The largest one I go to has 2 sites. The others are all single independents, one chain, one near me. I hardly ever visit. Again, it's a tough one, isn't it? These large garden centres, these large chains seem to be making garden centres last, whether we like it or not. The independents are still good, but the large chains have the buying power, so they can get good deals. Rob says, I can't keep up with supermarket prices now. Hashtag mission, go to the garden centre for plants and seeds, says Jenny. We've got a mission. We've got a mission. Scott says, a bigger range of plants is very difficult for garden centres or nursery to stock, but they should both do a much bigger range of seeds and not just from this few same companies. Well, that's hard because there are supply chains, and supply chains come from certain suppliers for a reason. It's to make the logistics of getting the plants into the garden centre cost effective to keep costs down. And I say that because, as you know, I am on the hunt for a particular pear tree, which I'm not prepared to pay £27 worth for postage and packaging, or what was it, 32. Basically, I'm not prepared to pay £30 postage and packaging for a pear tree that's going to cost £30. But it's a well-known supplier, and garden centres near me do sell their trees. I haven't found this exact pear tree that I'm after, but perhaps I could go and have a word with them and they might be able to order it in for me. So supply chain is an issue. That's where a lot of it comes from. Nigel says, a lot of garden centres are part of a chain. Consequently, their stock is allocated from a central office. Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. This and because the large chains, they have a buying power, so they can get better deals. Now, this actually brings me quite nicely in. Usually in September, I actually go to a garden event where a lot of the garden centres go and buy the products and get the chains going for their following year. Um, it's quite a good event, actually, I have to say, but it is based for getting products into garden centres. But I always like the small independents. I always feel they are the better area because that's where the more unusual and unique items are. But the garden centres don't always see it. So one example would be one of my favourite hose adapters, which these things, quick hose. You don't really see these in garden centres. I've never seen them in garden centres, but these to me are much, much better, in my opinion, than hose lock or anything like that. Much, much better, in my opinion. You might have a different opinion, but I think they are. Quick hose are much, much better. But they just it's the buying power from the big brands. I don't buy much from a garden centres really. I go to nurseries for plants and Amazon for tools. Yeah, there we go. Perhaps we're part of the problem. But I tried to use a garden calf last year, but a coachload of pensioners beat me to it. Yeah, but at least they're in there. You know, the day out for and we're all going to get old one day. We're going to be part of that crowd. So, and I'm going to be cantankerous when I'm like that. So, yeah, got to make the most of it. I think some of the chains overprice, e.g. Yeah, they can do. They can do. One near us, says Beddoes, is more well known for food than the plants. That's kind of what I get to. It feels a shame. Now, Rebecca says our local community bus does trips to the garden centre for the elderly and lowly. It's a lifeline for these people. It's a popular trip because of the calf. Now, again, you are right. I mean, the large garden centre I have near me actually has coach parking because people do go there for day trips. But so that one got knocked down a few years ago and rebuilt, and the original one I always felt was much better than what we have now. It was the type of place where you would go for the day. You would go for a trip out and have a look at the plants, have a look at the setups that they had. I always remember anybody near Littlehampton will know the one I'm talking about. They used to have this amazing sort of water feature, and it was worth going there for the day and coach trips. But now, and I'm thinking out loud, I never really see coaches in that coach parking place. But again, yeah, I say it's a good trip out. It's a good trip out for some people. Jenny has come up with a second mission: go to the garden centre for seeds, plants, and pop into the cafe for coffee. See if you change your mind. It's just not what I go into a garden centre for. Because I'm always rushing. I want to get in and get out, but that's me. Digwell says what Jenny said. 6 heading ball for £20. Lidl's same amount for £10. Often sells knockdown prices. You've got to remember that when you buy from Lidl or places like that, they may not be looking after the plants as well, though. So it's price. I do think price is a good thing. Price is a big thing of why we go into garden centres. If they're reasonably priced, then you're likely to go in there more. But if they are reasonably priced, there's a good chance that the business is not making money. Don't know on the facts and figures there. There was a garden centre in Cornwall near to where we go on holidays. They get fully booked for Sunday lunches. You know, I've said you all seem very much for the calf, which is fine. And you have persuaded me that calf is a good thing. But what about the actual garden centre itself? What is it that the garden centre itself makes you want to go in there? What is it about the garden centre? What makes you want to go in a garden centre? Muddy Puddles Farm is saying hello, I believe. Hello to you. Hope you are well. Rob says, hey up, Joe, Muddy's Puddle Farm. I was just getting to text you to remind you. Thank you very much, Rob, for sharing the show. Toby says, too many people astroturf in the garden because they are too busy on the phones to really enjoy a bit of garden. Yes and no. I don't think it's necessarily just the phones. I think it's our entire life now. We're working longer hours, and gardening is, it's for most of us, or for us lot, it's a hobby. It's something we enjoy doing. But for many people, gardening is a chore. And do you really want to be? I mean, I'm not really interested in tidying the house. So do I want to spend my free time tidying the house? Not really, but it has to be done. And for some people, that's the same analogy with garden centres. B&Q are DIY centres, agree, but they do have good plants and things like that, where people do go in spades and forks. People are buying their tools from there instead of garden centres. The Messy Allotment Tier has joined over on Instagram. Lovely to see you. Hope you are well. Bally Cillian says, just out of curiosity, how many of tonight's viewers went and spent money in the garden centre this week? Online buying doesn't count. It's a very good question. How many of you have gone in the garden centre this week and spent some money? I'm trying to think, have I? I went into the range. Does that count? Does the range count? Muddy Puddles Farm says, my husband doesn't garden without the other stuff. I would never get him there. Who would lift the compost? It's a good point. It's a good point. We've got to encourage people to do whatever they need to do. The Messy Allotment Tier says she hasn't visited a garden centre this year as of yet. That's good going. That's good going. Been about 4 years since I've been to a garden centre. I made it, says Idaho. Lovely to see you, Idaho. Hope you are well. What have we got? Chili Cake says we are pretty much every other week, but then our local Barget Garden Centre is additional DIY shop and ironmongery too, and a good cafe. And I believe you're talking about the same chain that I was on about earlier, which is one of my favourite chains that do sell very reasonably priced plants, products, along sort of in sort of Hampshire, Dorset area. But they were my favourite because they were reasonably priced. Rob says our pub has kicked people out for holding interviews. Yep. Digwell says I don't like being herded through the concessions to get into actual garden centre. I'm with you on that. I'm actually with you on that. It drives me mad. There's one garden centre that's probably 3/4 of an hour away, and you walk in, you go through. First of all, you will have some indoor plants, and then you go through, and you have. It's a bit like IKEA, where it's a bit of a map, but then you go into the candles, then you got the clothes, and then you finally get to the garden centre. So I'm with you on that. In one of mine, I have to weed my way through £1,000 oak tables, sketches, shoes, kids' books, etc. No shortcuts. Exactly like the one I was on about. Again, I'm with you. Benno says it's so easy to buy marigolds at the supermarket. It is. And Jenny says, whoops, I deleted the first mission as I pressed send by accident. Scrap that and add the other one, please. I think they'll still be on there. Digwell says, you missed off the important bit of Jenny's mission. Pop into the cafe for a coffee, see if you change your mind. Yeah, I did. I thought I read that out, but I will do that. If it wins, of course. Anna Jones says, I get far more stuff online, very little from garden centres. My go-to nursery is Crocus Online. Yeah. I mean, I've just ordered some potatoes, funnily enough, sea potatoes. Ordered them yesterday from Simply Seed. Now, the reason I've ordered them online is to make sure I can get them. And they were about the same price as going into a garden centre. But the thing is, if I go into a garden centre, I've got to buy them then. Otherwise, they could sell out. And then I've got to find somewhere to store them well. And seed potatoes are easy to store, don't get me wrong, but they take up space, and space is of a premium. So I've decided I would order them from Simply Seed, and what they've done is they've got this thing where you can actually set when you want your potatoes to arrive. So I've done that. I've got my potatoes arriving at the beginning of March, which means they should be good enough to go straight into the garden, more or less. So yeah, I am becoming a bit more of somebody who orders things online. Before this, I've always bought seed potatoes from a garden centre, but as I said, you've got to find somewhere to store them. I'd sooner let the garden centre store them for me. Toby Clark says, #mission, go to a garden centre and have a full English. You're going to get me in trouble with the wife. A lot of trouble with the wife. But if that's the case, I've got a garden centre I've wanted to go for breakfast for a while. What have we got? Scott says, my local cafe charges $9.99 for a ham salad sandwich, and they need to do this because food prices and overheads. Most people would be shocked the cafe restaurant won't be keeping the rest afloat. Well, overheads and things like that do cost a lot. Digwell says, you don't see those quick hose things because the garden centres have a contract with Hoselock, Gardenia, Karcher, etc., so they cannot sell other makes. You've got a point there. You have got a very good point there. Scott says, the sales on candles, etc., will be the cafe keeps you there longer for shopping. Yeah, again, not wrong. Nicholas says, which garden centre in Cornwall for lunches? I don't know. Digwell, so we all like a calf except you, the Veg Grower Podcast. You are the odd one out. It's not that I dislike the calf. It's that, for me, the calf isn't what makes a garden centre. The garden centre makes the calf. So, yeah, I may be the odd one out. It's not important to me for a garden centre. I think that's the way I can describe it. The messy allotment is, and I just said about potatoes, I'm going to a potato day to get some of mine locally. Good idea. Rob says, our B&Q has a burger van in the car park. Best burgers you will ever buy. Oh, yeah. Again, you are making good points about the food. You are making good points about the food and the cafe. But what about the garden centre? What about the garden centre? It just feels very wrong that we're really emphasising how good the cafe is without really talking about the garden centre. Jenny says, I went to our local garden centre. I went to buy some plants, but I held off as the staff said more stock coming in next week. I made a wish list, though. I had a coffee and cake in the cafe. Fair enough. I often go to the big weaves of Richbold Garden Centre, mostly to walk around the gardens. I've brought a few things, but it's mainly for a trip out. Again, I'm all for that. In fact, I sometimes go to a garden and it's got a nursery attached to it. And she's a very well-known, just outside of Colchester, very well-known gardener who's unfortunately no longer with us. Her name escapes me. Anyway, my point was I looked around these gardens, and they had a nursery attached to it, so I could buy the plants that I was seeing. Now, Digwell says, so should petrol stations stop selling food? I mean, we go there for petrol. Yeah, but you're going there for petrol. That's my point. My point with garden centres, you're going there for the garden centre. You're not going there necessarily going there for the calf. But you do make a good point. Where does it end? Why do we get? Well, we don't anymore, really. But newspapers, should we only get those from news agents, not the petrol stations or places like that? Should we only get our meat from the butchers, our vegetables from the greengrocers? You are making a very good point. You are making a very good point, and you've persuaded me a lot. Moneybook says, I got in the centre this week to get my coffee, which are included with the membership. Who actually goes to a garden centre for the garden centre? I bought 2 fruit trees this week, says Muddy Puddles Farm. Excellent. What fruit trees did you buy? Nicholas says, not been in a garden centre, too many other things plus the weather. I've hardly been out the house, so never thought of going to a garden centre this week. Am I really that far behind? Rebecca says, I think these garden centres have to try everything they can to survive. In the summer, Tesco's was selling banana plants for £8. They were 3 times that at my local garden centre. How can they compete on that? You're not wrong. You're not wrong. And this is kind of where I want to find out is that garden centres, obviously, they need to make a survive. They need to make a living. And are they going down routes because the gardens are we saying that gardening is not profitable? Is that what we're saying? Digwell, I'm waiting for the seed spuds to go on display before I go to my garden centre. They're on display in some already, certainly around here anyway. Nigel, I visited my local garden centre this week, had 2 copies, which are part of my membership. I think already had that done. I've decided to start my stream to go to a garden centre and have a coffee and buy a candle just to annoy Richard. I know my garden centre is all organic. All their seedlings are primo, but one veg seedling $5. It's a good place to find organic and pest control. They have a cafe with about 3 tiny tables and never eaten there. Stuart has joined over on Instagram. Sorry, team, I have to miss this week. I have a water infection, so I can't hear very well. See you all next week. I think it's meant to be ear infection. But I like the sound of war infection. Hope you're well, buddy. Lovely to see you. Buddy, I haven't been in the garden centre. Won't be going till they have something I need for any shop to buy. Interesting. It's really interesting, this. Idaho says they have lots of garden-themed decor T-shirts. I never buy, but I also have excellent quality tools. Yeah. Buy an Easter egg to annoy him more. Jenny says, Digwell, the seed spuds are out at my garden centre. Pick a mix or bagged. I'm doing a pick a mix as I'm going to do your SSPC method for all my spuds this year. Feeling very inspired. 1 bag, many varieties. And Digwell gives a thumb up. Dizzy Gunner. I visit a wide range of nurseries and garden centres. Some are fantastic for the range of plants and knowledgeable staff, where I pay a little more. Others are cheap and cheerful for the basics. Which ones do you prefer, though? Which ones do you prefer? And what is it that you prefer about them? How many candles do you need? Nigel says, without the calf, there would probably be no toilets, so I think you owe them one. Am I really that far back on the comments? Yeah, you're right. You are right. Might buy some tinsel too. Peter Seabrook. No, not Peter Seabrook. It's a girl, a woman. Really famous woman. She's got lots of books. Garden near Chelsea, near Colchester, Essex. I just can't think of her name. I love the wide range of nurseries and garden centres. I choose the ones I need on the day. Sometimes it's because they have a fab cav too. Sometimes because they're a range of price in needing. Absolutely. Digwell, only 40 years ago, that's just about how shopping was. Yeah, just before my time. Just before my time. Nicola, when I lived in Brighton, I used to go to Race Hill with my best friend. Did the scale, corner, etc. Then had tea or lunch in the girly gate. Now go on my own. Not so much fun, but still have to have a sit and a drink. Dobby spots are also on show. I only go to garden centre for plant tools, seeding supplies, and compost, etc. It's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting while we're going to garden centres. My garden centre calf is £10 for a ham sandwich and quality. I've read that one, haven't I? I've read that one. Cox's orange pippin and cherry hellfinger was the 2 fruit trees that she brought. Excellent stuff. Rebecca says, I just walk on past the stuff I don't want and head to the plants section. It doesn't offend me that it's there. Somebody is buying it and everyone is different. It's nice to have choice. Yeah, you are right. Again, you are right. I don't know why I get so upset by it. I don't know. Perhaps I need to investigate why I get upset. Beth Chateau, thank you. Beth Chateau, that's who I was thinking of. If you're ever in that sort of area, I really recommend going to visit Beth Chateau. As I said, they've got a really lovely garden. And then there's their plant nursery next to it, which you can see the plants growing in the garden and then buy them. Thank you. Beth Chateau, exactly what I was thinking of. Nicola, I sometimes go for a wander, might not buy anything, but it gets me off the farm and in company. Always at the sale doing check-in. Absolutely. Highgrave, it is really difficult to run a business. 40% of those that opened in the last 5 years have already closed. If selling random stuff keeps garden centres open, why are we complaining about it? My worry, I think we hit on this. We've said this before. My worry is with garden centres sort of losing their identity. It comes back to the fact that some garden centres have got now supermarkets inside them. Dobbies, in particular, have got Waitrose inside them, and half of what was a good garden centre has been lost to having this Waitrose. And then obviously it's getting people in the door, which can be a good thing. But is that a case that the garden centre is losing their identity, or is it a wider effect that gardening is not profitable, or people are not as interested in gardening as they used to be, that they're not spending money in a garden centre? Or is it come back to the gardeners want to save money? And that's kind of where I'm going. It's not so much the selling random stuff. It's, shouldn't garden centres be profitable on their own? That's probably what I want to get to. That's probably what I want to get to. In general, I think nurseries have more knowledgeable staff than those working in a garden centre. Absolutely right. And Jenny says, Richard, was it gravel gardens and drought tolerant gardens? Part of it did have there was a gravel and drought tolerant garden, yes, but there was also a huge lake as well. So Beth Chateau, the organic nursery you go to carries veggie starts that are unusual varieties. For example, they probably have 75 varieties of peppers and chilies and thousands of tomatoes. None are hybrids. Yeah, again, it's difficult, isn't it, with knowing when people can buy that sort of stuff. Yeah. Nigel says, I'll read that one first. I think you require something out of the ordinary. You need to visit specialized growers. I agree with that. Do agree with that. You do need specialized growers, but I come back to that. A garden center can sometimes help find the right. Some garden centers can help find the products that you are after. Yeah, so again, knowledgeable staff can help. Rebecca, and also Richard, are you just wanting plants in your ideal garden centre, or are you adding tools, labels, watering cans, etc.? Where do you draw the line? Some people might think that's tact. For me, a garden centre, and I'm saying this as a gardener, somebody who's interested in gardening, for me, it should be everything that you would need in a garden. So it does include tools, labels, watering cans, lawnmowers. I mean, I hardly ever see lawnmowers in garden centres thinking about it these days, unless it's B&Q or somewhere. Garden trimmer, those sort of things, fence panels, garden furniture. For me, that is what a garden centre should be selling. But yeah, where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line? For me, it's, if it belongs in a garden, it should be sold in a garden centre. Ballycillian says, bit of subject, but all the range stores over here have an Iceland in them. So every store just looking to survive. That's because the range and the Iceland are part of the same company. That's why that happens, which is probably the same as Dobbies and Waitrose. Digwell says, when I worked in Seven Vale Garden Centre, became Y Vale, then Dobbies, it was a pure garden centre. They all were African violets by the hundreds, etc. But obviously the business model had to change. But then you think that's a change? Do you think it's a shame the business model has had to change? And I guess you could say that's the same with pubs and everything else that it seems to be going down, and we've spoken about, is there's business models are changing, that what they were meant to be isn't what they are. Yeah, I'm getting very, very lost here. Otherwise, the choices Lowe's, Home Depot, Feed Store, and all those opinions. etc., etc. Anyway, we need to go to one of our videos. So let's go to the mission for the week. Okay, so for this week's mission, it's a really good one actually. It was to make a bird feeder out of recycled materials. I've came up with something. Let me show you what we got. So this is my bird feeder. As you know, I like to keep things simple. So all I've done is I've taken a plastic container. This is food that Roxy's food comes in, her wet food. So we go through quite a few of these and they are actually quite useful. But of course you could use any plastic container should you want to do this at home. In each corner I've just drilled a hole, nice and simple, and then through the hole I've taken some string, this is twine from the garden, and just looped it and tied it off to hold it. And that then creates a nice little way to hang the food up, hang the feeder up. And in terms of adding food, I've got some bird seed just here. There we go. That goes in there. That hangs up. Bird comes along, yum, 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 and off it goes. So there we go, one nice and easy bird feeder. Took seconds to make, but it will last for quite a while, and it, more importantly, it'll feed those hungry birds. I've used bird feed, but there's no reason that we can't put slugs and snails in there to help the birds eat those as well. If you've got an adaptation that you would do, let me know in the comments. Back to the studio, and is that mission accomplished or mission failed? Indeed, is that mission accomplished or mission failed? Just to recap, the mission was to make a bird feeder out of recycled materials. I think that's mission accomplished, as that was quite an easy one to do. Nigel says, a lot of gardeners take a flask to the allotment and drink tea. That justifies the CAF in garden centres. Yeah. As I said, I've got no problem with the CAF. And people going for a coffee and stuff. You've justified the CAF to me a lot today, so I will look at the CAF quite differently now. It's just not something I really visit when I'm in a garden centre, but that's possibly because I'm in and out. Digwell says you only had to look at the Glee even at the NEC event at the NEC. About 50% of the exhibitors were not directly garden related. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Garden related. Nicholas says, what I dislike with garden centres that dye plants like heather or spray tiny Christmas trees with fake snow. Yeah, I've seen that a few times, but I don't know. I don't know enough about it to know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Well, obviously it's a bad thing, but again, why are they spraying plants, spraying heathers? It's to sell them. And as we've said, if that's the business model, then it has to be successful. Digwell gives a thumbs up. Please remember to hit the thumbs up, please. Everyone says, yeah, please do give us a thumbs up, a like, and subscribe. And don't forget to click the bell so you know when we go live. Leafy Keith is someone who has worked in garden centres and now works on a nursery. I would say it's the people who work there. People who are knowledgeable about the plants and know about the products they sell. See, again, I totally agree with that. That is what I like in a garden centre, is when I can go up and go to the help desk and say, do you have this plant? Where would I find it? Where can I plant it? What's best for this condition? And so on. I agree. I do agree. I do think for me, that is, for me, the most important part of a garden centre, somebody who knows all about it. Well, staff that are trained to know all about it, and passionate as well, actually. Passion has got a big thing about it. Bally Sin says, probably the best thing to do is buy what you want and walk past what you don't want, then no harm done. For me, it's just, as I say, it comes back to this whole thing, and as I said earlier, is what's causing this shift that garden centres are having to sell other items that is gardening not a profitable business? Yeah. Love it, Richard. Mission accomplished. Thank you. Hargrave, accomplished. What have we got? Accomplished. Thank you. Mission accomplished. I would try to put a roof over to see the key to keep. Let me get my words out. To keep the sea dry. It's rainy in Cornwall. Yep, absolutely. Mission accomplished. Maybe a few more holes in the bottom for aiding drainage. Yep. Digwell says, at Glee, there were 5 stalls promoting greeting cards, for example. Yeah, I remember that, actually. I don't think I've ever bought a greeting card from a garden centre. But, yeah, there are stalls. And, again, that comes back to what I was saying. Rebecca's actually hit it there. Very true there, Digwell, about garden shows. They're turning into lifestyle shows. And that's, where did he mention garden shows? Was that about, have I missed a comment? Or were you talking about Glee? Glee, of course, Glee. Yeah. And that's having a knock-on effect. I mean, I've said, I went to a garden show and they were selling beds, as in beds that you sleep in at a garden event. And that just felt very wrong. Beds and holidays. It just didn't feel connect. I've got it. I've got what my problem is with it. It's about having the connection, the association, that everything you're paying for a garden show because you're a gardener. It's about it all being related to gardening. Hargrave says garden shows probably wouldn't happen either if they couldn't have all the non-plant stands. I stock up on obscure alcohols every year at Audley End. Yeah. I mean, it's a sign of the times, isn't it? This is where what I guess I'm getting at. But I think the point was, what makes a good garden centre? That was the original question. They spray heathers, etc., because people buy them. The longest expense at Nurseries Garden Centre is labour. Yeah, well, I suspect in the UK it's probably the price of the land and business rates and things like that as well. But yeah. To answer your question, no, gardening is not often a profitable business. There we go. That is what I was trying to get to. What I was thinking is there's got to be a reason why garden centres can't make a profit out of gardening items, that they're struggling. And why? Well, why though? Why do you think they can't do it? For me, I go to garden centre for a shopping experience with others and to buy other things and also food. I go to nursery for just gardening stuff only, says Scott. See, I've got to admit, nurseries for me, I do go to nurseries when I want to buy plants. For me, they're very specialised for plants only. And generally speaking, not always, but generally speaking, nurseries always have a good, knowledgeable amount of people. The knowledge for me is what I think is quite important. But but nurseries are generally for plants, although I do know some nurseries that sell other items as well, such as spades and forks and things like that. But generally, nurseries are plants, garden centres are for gardening items, in my mind. Loads of Digwell says garden centres, being part of the retail, hospitality and leisure sector, have been eligible for specific government business rates relief schemes. For example, in 2025-2026, eligible properties receive a 40% release and are generally exempt from business rates if they grow their own plants. Okay, I've learned something now I did not know. Rob says a lot of supermarkets are now closing their caps to save money on staff. Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? So maybe why the concessions are there. Maybe. Idaho says, I guess I'm confused about difference between garden centre and nursery. In my area, garden centre is the sales portion of a nursery. Everything else is just another type of store bringing in stuff. So for me, and that might be a good question, is what in your mind is the difference between a nursery and a garden centre? For me, a nursery specialises in plants. A garden centre specialises in the garden. That's how I understand it. That is my perception of the difference between a nursery and a garden centre. But what's your perception? What's your thoughts on that? What's the difference between a plant nursery and a garden centre? So my notes, I'm just going to quickly read off my notes of what I thought, and I think I said this at the beginning. What for me makes a good garden centre is that it has good plants and good stock, good quality stock that is reasonably priced. And I say that because I don't mind paying money for stuff that is going to last, that is going to do the job. I resent paying a lot of money for products or tools that don't last. And for me, the other thing that makes the garden a garden centre good is having educated staff. Educated, I say educated, that feels really wrong. Trained staff, that's a better word. Trained staff to look after what we want. That to me is what makes a good garden centre. You have persuaded me on the calf, so I'm going to add in a good calf for bringing in people. And it was the bit about bringing in clubs and things like that that sort of switched me onto it, because I do think that is an important. So yeah, you have persuaded me there. Digwell says nurseries sell plants, garden centres sell plants and other crap. To me, the garden centre is about the garden. That for me is the difference between the two. Hargrave says, to me, a nursery is just plants, but I didn't used to use one which sold great free range eggs as well. Yeah, I mean, it's not unusual for nurseries to sell free range eggs and things like that either, is it? But yeah, I think I'm going to ask everybody else what their definition of what is the difference between a plant nursery and a garden centre. And then I guess we've said B&Q and the likes of that is a DIY centre. What about the likes of the Range or Wilco's or B&M? What do they fall into? I feel they are more department stores, which I guess is what garden centres in some ways have become, more like a department store. Just thinking out loud here. Just thinking out loud. Training garden centre staff to cover the range of products they sell can be difficult. Yeah, but if they were working in certain areas of the garden centre, then surely not so difficult. If they're working in the garden tools area, it should be, again, I've got no experience, so I'm probably talking out my arse, but it's just my thoughts. Just my thoughts is that it would be, yeah. I've never really worked in that line of work, so it's difficult for me to answer that. But at the end of the day, I still think it's important, if you're selling something or you're in a garden centre, to have a good round knowledge, or be able to take you to somebody that does have the information. Digwell, the Range is a discount warehouse type store like B&M. Excuse me. Yeah. Most staff in our garden centre cover the whole store. Yeah. Again, I love it when we see local jobs for local people is not quite what I mean, but when you have a garden centre or any business locally, it's going to employ people local, which I think is a good thing as well. Even if it's minimum wage, I know there's a lot of debate on minimum wage, but trouble is, I've always believed in upskilling staff. So anybody that I've ever had working underneath me, I've always wanted to get them more training. I've always wanted to further their career and get them. And I've always believed that the staff get more involved when you give them a bit more respect, a bit more skills. When you allow them to grow, I've always believed that is an important part of continuing or keeping staff, is invested in staff. That's the word I'm looking for. Investing in staff. Too few staff to only work one area alone. My local one has loads of staff. Again, it could be different where I am. I was imagining mice through the garden centre, Nigel. Scott says, I just grow fruit and veg mostly, so my views are different to people that enjoy the whole garden in flowers, and all that makes sense. Absolutely. And that is gardening is a nutshell, isn't it? We all like different things. None of us is wrong or right. We're just different. Same as everything. Rebecca says, it just seems every store sells everything nowadays. It's all blended into one. And you're not wrong there. You are not wrong. You're not wrong there. And every shop that seems to specialize in one thing does seem to be dying out. If we think of pubs, they specialize in selling alcohol. They've gone into selling food as well, but they do seem to be slowly closing more and more. I'm trying to think of other examples. We've had Mothercare, Toys R Us. They specialized in a particular area and they've all gone by the wayside. I'm trying to think of other examples, but I can't think of any. My garden centre is bigger than yours, Nigel. We have rat staff. Oh dear. You plonker, George. It's the moles you need to look out for. Moles. They're dangerous things, land sharks. If everyone was perfect like me, then it would be a funny old world, says Digwell. Absolutely. David Austin is thriving. I know him through plants. Does he have a garden centre or is he a nursery? Yeah. Right, let's go to this week's Cookalong video. Okay, so for this week's Cookalong, you wanted me to cook something from stock stored from the summer. So I've got quite a few ingredients here. We're going to make a butternut and lime and chilli soup. So of course the butternut grew this. The lime I didn't grow, admittedly. Onions I did grow. We've got some garlic and some chilli, and then of course some vegetable stock. So first of all, we're just going to slice some onions and get these sautéed, which I'm going to do in a pan separately. Okay, so the onions are now sautéed. I've sautéed these in a separate pan for convenience reasons. I can't quite get the sauté function to work well on this blender. But we're going to stick all this in a blender along with the butternut that while that was cooking I was chopping. We're going to add in the dried chilli. This is chilli I grew and dried it myself and then left it to make the best out of it. Some I've got a garlic press, so I haven't sautéed the garlic for this one. In goes the garlic. I've got the juice from the lime, which I'm pouring in as well. Let's see if we can get any more juice out of that. Maybe just a little bit more. There we go. And then we've got a bit of vegetable stock to go in as well. I might just add a bit more to that. A bit more water to that. There we go. Now we put the lid on and we put it on the smooth soup function, which will cook all those vegetables and the stock and blend it at the same time. So in half an hour's time we'll come back and see how it looks. In the meantime, we better do the washing up. So it's been half an hour now and I've got my bowl ready. Let's have a look and see how this soup looks. That looks gorgeous. But how does it taste? That is a question we're going to find out back in the studio. So there we go. This is our pumpkin and chili and lime soup. How does it taste? Let's find out. That is lovely. So it's not pumpkin, it's butternut squash. That is lovely. Oh, that is lovely. I can really taste the lime in that as well. Really, really lovely. Absolutely delicious. I'm going to give that a good 9.5 out of 10. That was really nice. Really nice. That's going to be my lunches for the week. Lovely. Garden centres cater for people. No, back to the comments. Turbo Stream says garden centres cater for people who want to create a garden, so they naturally sell stuff to accompany the plants, i.e., garden furniture, etc. That's my perception as well. David Austin is probably the top rose grower in the world. That's exactly what I recognised him for. I just suddenly thought, hang on, has he got a garden centre when it was mentioned earlier? Has he got a garden centre or something that I don't know about? Nursery had a chat with him at Garden Press event. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. Rebecca says, even my dentist is at it. You don't just go in for your teeth. They offer all sorts nowadays. Botox, facials, teeth whitening. What's the world coming to? You've got a really good point there. I didn't think of that, but yeah, my dentist does a similar sort of thing. It is what is the world coming to? God damn it. We should be back to where we should be. You know. David Austin roses are popular over here. They're popular all over the world. He's probably one of the most significant rose growers. Quickly, I forgot about Instagram for a second. So John Joacolis, I hope I pronounced that correct. I probably got it very, very wrong. He says, I assume it's a he, apologies if it's not. I go to Blue Diamond, sells clothes, plants, tools, food, housewares. I can go with the wife and we split up. I look at the plants, she looks at other things. We meet for coffee and both are happy. Yep. Yeah, again, me and Amanda do that actually. We do split up. I go look at the things I want to look at. She goes looks at the things she wants to look at. We don't necessarily meet up for a coffee, but that's because, to be honest, we don't really go out for coffee. We're not that type. So, yeah. Beddoes says, should the Veg Grower podcast be doing a cooking show? So the rules are with the cooking, where do you draw the line? The rules are it's got to be something I've grown. For me, that to me, it's no point talking about growing the food if we're not going to be talking about eating the food at the same time. But I take your point. Toby says, #mission, greenhouse, New Year maintenance. Good point. That's a good one. That's on the mission list. We'll do that draw in a bit. Nicholas says, supermarkets did it to the local shops. On a Sat, I remember going to bakers, butchers, greengrocers, corner store for tin food packets and a hardware shop. The supermarket have closed those down. You are right. You are right. It's the death of the high street as well, isn't it? Because it's all convenient in one place. And this comes back to what I said right at the very beginning, that people aren't doing so much gardening these days because life gets in the way. We're working more. We have less free time at a time when we should be having more free time. So things suffer. Digwell, love it. I did not come here for the food. Well, it was done for a reason. By the way, have we had any cookalongs yet? We haven't. If anybody can suggest hashtag cookalong for a recipe that we can cook next week, we've got about 5 minutes before I do that draw. Digwell says it's called the Walmart syndrome, a popular case study in marketing. Interesting. I know. Well, I'm behind the times. I did not know that there is a blender that simultaneously cooks and blends. I tell you what, it is a brilliant piece of kit. It does also saute, but I can never quite get that to work right. But I tell you what, those Ninja blenders, we've actually got the food processor now. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Soups, smoothies, brilliant. Looks nice. Love the addition of lime. Lime just adds a nice little tingle to it. It's really quite tasty, actually. Digwell says, I don't wear Edinburgh wool shawls in my garden. Point taken. Oh, you haven't lived there, Digwell. Hargrave says, Blue Diamond runs Cotton Orchard, my favourite garden centres, great plants and knowledgeable staff. I'm trying to think if a garden centre around here is Blue Diamond, or I don't think it is. I can't think of a Blue Diamond that I have in my area. What have we got? Any photos this week? Coming up in just a moment. Hargrave says it's not the supermarket's fault. We are to blame. If we don't support specialist shops, they will close. I agree. I totally agree with that. Totally agree with that, actually. As somebody that does spend too much time on Amazon, yeah. Nigel says, usually if businesses are not prepared to think outside the box, they will usually stand still and eventually go under. Yeah. It just feels so wrong to say that, doesn't it? We are to blame. We are to blame. Ninja Warak Lee asked Digwell. Yes, I know they were. They were the after party. They do a lot of the cooking there as well, which is always good. Digwell, it can only saute a very finely chopped onion, and it only does for 4 minutes. Best to do it separately. That's what I thought. That's what I do. I do it separately. For that very reason. Chili K, I find I need to run the saute function twice, and it only does it a tiny bit, so just onion or garlic. I actually found that when I sauteed my onions in it as well, it got a bit too hot. It burnt them, so it just didn't give me the control that I wanted from onions. Digwell says, had a great chat with Ninja. Still no free barbecue, but we are swapping emails. Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff. Right, you have asked for the photos. It's time to have a look at your photos. So, first of all, we have got this photo. Let me bring it up because I can't actually see it. Now, Digwell, actually, this is actually kind of related to what we were talking about. Premier Seeds Direct. Excuse me. I've got the Charles Dowding range, and he was a little outraged with the price of these seeds. Now, Premier Seeds Direct generally sell pretty reasonably priced seeds, so adding to this is not twice the price of what the seeds would normally cost because of Charles Dowding's name. Do you think that's right or not? That's open for debate. Nathan has started his seeds off a little later than usual, he says, but nonetheless, he has started them off. They look like chili seeds looking at the names of these, but looks great nonetheless. Jan has shared this recipe. On last week's podcast, I shared a recipe of leek potato and thyme soup, and she shared this leek potato and white bean soup just to add a little bit of extra what's the word I'm looking for? Protein, fill you up a bit more, basically. Beddoes, he's also been out planted, but he's forgot where he's planted where. Obviously, this is intended as a joke, but it's a true part, isn't it? We all sow seeds and we forget to label them. I'm very fastidious that I pop my labels in before I sow any seeds now, right? And even then there's a risk the label can get lost. Now, Steve has also acted as a weatherman. He often does share the weathers, and he was worried about down in Devon, that area of the world where the storm, what do you call it, was hitting hard. Hopefully, everyone was okay, as we've said earlier. He also shared this cunning way to get rid of a Christmas tree, wrapping it up and tying it to make it look like a body. Now, personally, I tried doing this, but it wouldn't stop moving. So I had to get rid of a Christmas tree by running it through the shredder. Now, please do keep sharing your photos. These have all came from our Facebook group, or you can send to me via social media or email me, richard@theveggroundpodcast.co.uk. richard@theveggroundpodcast.co.uk. Obviously, we always love seeing everybody's photos, and we could always do with more, because I just think it makes a lovely part of this show when we can see what everyone else is doing. Right, where have we got? Where are we going? Right, I read. Oh, I've just skipped loads. Hang on. Right. Digwell has suggested a Cookalong, bake a loaf of bread. I'm not very good at baked bread, but I'll give it a go. Nicholas says, I have a Thermomix. It has a different temps you can set. Ah, interesting. Rob says to Nigel, that happens in most small, middle-sized company. I even had to change my business to suit the market. Absolutely. Bennos, if anyone uses a Ninja, will the frying pan die out? No, you can't cook an omelette in a Ninja. Muddy Boots says Lord Charles is not letting him add his name for nothing. Of course not. Twice the price for less than half the quantity and not organic like that. Cheaper seeds. Outrageous profiteering. Business, though, isn't it? As we've been saying tonight, businesses need to adapt, and that's what they've done. Rebecca says, well, great debate tonight. Thank you, Richard. I'm off to the garden centre now to do my weekly food shop, buy a scented candle and birthday card and a pair of socks. Are you going to get a coffee at the same time as well? Mind you, at 7:30, that'd be a good garden centre that is open at 7:30 on a Sunday night. Enjoy. Seeds are expensive over here. Ordinary seed varieties are inexpensive, but new varieties are easily £4 a packet. They're $4 a packet, sorry. They get expensive over here as well, I have to say. Very expensive. Low seed prices are garden centre prices. They are. None of my photos from this week. I didn't see any from this week. Ian, no good for fried eggs. Nicola, if you have a Thermomix, try a chicken liver parfait in it. Ooh, interesting. Right, we're going to do the draw in just a second. We've got two subjects that I want to discuss next week, if you are open to it. The choice of two. We got one of the subjects I would like to talk about is, have you ever employed somebody to do some work in your garden, or would you ever employ somebody to do some work in your garden, i.e. a tree surgeon or just a general maintenance? And second subject, and it's up to you which one of the two you want to talk about, what are you growing that you've never grown before? So over to you to decide which of the two subjects you want to discuss. In the meantime, we're going to do the draw. So first of all, we've got the Cookalong, which there is only the one draw, which is Digwell's loaf of bread. So I'm going to make a loaf of bread next week. And as somebody that doesn't eat bread, not easy to do. What have we got? So the next draw, I think we've got more for this one. It's is it that one? No, that one is the mission. So we've got 3 entries for this, and I can't remember. 2 of them were the same thing. The other one, I can't remember what it was. So let's find out who whose mission we are going to be doing. As it rolls. Jenny's. So remind me what your mission was. I remember it being a popular one, but please remind me what it was. Let's get rid of that. Right, just as we start rounding up. I prefer my liver parfait on a plate, easy to eat. Will do, Scott. Nicholas says, I messaged my local tree surgeon. He's dropping off a load of wood chip. Yay. Scott says, you can eat it out of a Thermomix if you like, or spoon it onto the plate. Indeed, indeed. Anyway, so you got choice between the two. Choice between the two. And we are going into overtime a bit, so we do need to start packing up here. But yeah, as I said, the two subjects. Are you growing anything that you've never grown before is the question I want to ask. Or the second question is, have you ever paid for somebody to do any work in your garden, and why? What do you think? What do you think on that? Or do I just decide between the two? Let's bring that up. To go to the garden centre, buy what you need, and have a coffee to see if you've changed your mind. That's the mission. That is the mission, indeed. Rob says number 2, which was the have you ever grown something you've never grown before? Employing someone would be a good topic. So 1 vote for each there. Night, Richard and all. Right. Everyone's packing up. Have a good week. I know we've got overtime. It's been a good debate tonight. I think everyone's enjoyed it. Deciders I have done neither or intended to. Okay. Maybe do both. Trouble is, if the topic gets really heated or good, we may not have time to do both. But okay, we'll do both. Should we do both? We'll do both. We'll do one half of employing gardeners. I guess that won't take too long. And then anything you've never grown before. We will do both. That sounds quite good. Right. I think we need to get out of here because I'm sure everybody wants to now go and do whatever you need to do. Where are my media assets? That's the one. That's what I want. Right. It is time now. Pack up, get out of here. Pay someone to grow something new. Do both. Flip a coin. Yes, do both. I do both, whatever you decide. Okay. I don't. Up until 2024, I did all my garden work. In 2024, I had to hire a young man to help build raised beds. That's exactly the sort of thing I want to talk about as well. Okay, we'll do both. We can always return back the following week. Right. It is time now to leave. Time to pack up for the night. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. I think it's been really interesting, actually, having this conversation and being able to be so open and frank, and different opinions, different thoughts. We're still friends. That's the important thing. Anyway, thanks so much, guys. We will be back again next Sunday at 6. So until then, take care.